Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to NRT Now. It is Monday, November 6, 2017. A brand new week, and we have a special guest, not Marcus, here. This is not Marcus.
I am not Marcus.
We both know Marcus, but this is Jesse Meyer. Meyer.
Definitely Meyer.
Meyer.
I mean, it'd be great if it was a Mayer, because then it'd be like Jesse Meyer, like John Mayer. But
You would have an O in the end.
Everybody, welcome to
But welcome, and usually when I'm flying solo, you guys know things go all over the place because I don't have Marcus's hands as well. But Jesse is worship leader here at Vineyard, Boise, as well as a national recording artist now.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. So I thought he would be a great guest host to join me today and talk with all of you guys. So everybody say hi to Jesse and wave hi and let us know where you're piping in from this morning. We are going to talk about how worship moves us throughout the week. You're a worship leader. I did worship for about 15 years, and so definitely it is part of both of our nature and culture and what we invest in throughout the week. You've got some really cool news coming up with Vineyard Boise or Vineyard Music nationally. That is kind of hitting hometown here, which is awesome.
Yep.
So we'll talk about that, and then you're going to play one of your originals.
Yeah.
So that's the schedule, and then of course we want to talk to all of you. So chime in on the topic. How do you guys interact with worship throughout the week? How does it move you? What ways do you consume it? And we'll get started. So. Yeah, let's just jump in. First let's talk about kind of the music and where you're at with Vineyard Music.
Yeah, so it's been a cool year. In March last year, or actually no, this year, March 2017, I got to go to Maine, which is my first time on the East Coast, and got to work with the folks at Anchor Studios.
Yes.
And they are the guys that have done two of the most recent Vineyard Worship releases. So Kiri Elison and then Wear the Crown, which both of those albums are awesome. Yeah. In my opinion. I
are
some of the best stuff coming out of the Vineyard in a long time. So
I agree. We opened the show with
That's right.
With the title track of the new one that just came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Sarah
Elmer
is the singer. She's amazing. If you guys, we were just talking about how much she sounds like Lauren Daigle.
Yeah.
So she's fantastic. But I think they need to do a solo album with her. But,
okay. I'll talk to him.
Yeah, let's make that happen.
Yeah.
It'll be because of this show right here.
Yeah. Totally. So I got to go to Maine and recorded an original song of mine called "All for You, Jesus," and that was just a cool experience to get to do that. And the song has been received really well. At least within the Vineyard movement, there's quite a few people leading that song, and it's been received well. Like there's on Spotify, it's been on a couple playlists, so it's gotten listened to quite a bit, which is really cool.
Nice.
To see your song like actually go somewhere. It's been fun. And then I got to sing a couple other tracks one other track on Kiri Elison, and then one track on Wear the Crown, the Doxology track.
Yeah, the last one.
Yeah.
And these are your first kind of national recordings, or have you done others?
Sort of. I did like about 5 years ago. There was a youth conference that Jeremiah Carlson pioneered.
The Never Claim.
Yeah, the guy with the Never Claim.
He will be on the show tomorrow.
Yeah. So I actually did I was a part of two albums that we did with Cultivation Generation, and those were nationally released with Vineyard Music as well.
Okay.
So this isn't my first time, but my first time not being a part of Cultivation Generation. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, this is big for. It's definitely big for Boise when you've got. The Vineyard Music movement is really based on the churches. How many churches are there in?
I believe it's hovered around 600,
okay. Wow.
650 in the United States.
Just in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're always pulling from worship leaders across their various churches. Yeah. The last Boise worship leader was Casey. What was his last name?
Casey Corum.
Casey Corum.
Yeah.
And so that was and he did pretty well within the system. And then Vineyard Music kind of went almost dark for a little bit. They weren't releasing a ton of music.
Yeah, I think. We had Jeremy Riddle was actually who's at Bethel now.
Yeah.
He did like 3 records with Vineyard Music. Those are probably some of the more well-known records of the last like 5 to 10 years. And then when he went to Bethel, we were still doing some stuff. But I think Vineyard Worship, Vineyard Music actually changed to Vineyard Worship. and we're trying to kind of figure out where do we fit within the landscape of modern worship, and trying to figure that out. And I think within the last, so they were still releasing stuff, but I think within the last year or two, there's been some changes, and just probably more than that is Vineyard Worship kind of finding their identity of who they are and what their purpose is. And so I think as they've kind of landed on that, it started to, some of the return on that is starting to come out in some new projects and stuff that's resonating.
Well, it's awesome. I mean, worship is exploding. We talk about it all the time here on the show, especially out of the local church, which really it kind of left the artist world and has just blown up from the local church into this national scene. There's so much of it coming out.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about what, like throughout the week, outside of Sunday, what do you do to stay connected to worship music? And Mary gave a good clarification. We are talking about worship music, not just worshiping, which can be anything. However, if we want to go there, we certainly can.
Yeah.
So talk about the ways that you stay connected throughout the week.
Well, and even in kind of that topic of what worship is, we were just having a conversation on Sunday yesterday between between services, and a friend of mine was sort of tongue-in-cheek, like, he wasn't in the worship service, and I was like, hey, why weren't you in the worship, and he's like, well, like, I worship all week, and it kind of gets you thinking, like, the reality is that worship is, singing, that's definitely, musical worship is a big part of what worship is, but, it's clearly a lot more than that. But I think sometimes there's a pendulum, and people land like, well, I don't really like singing, so my worship is, I just live my life to the glory of God, and that's my thing, and I don't really need to sing. And there's others that really enjoy singing, and they enjoy music, but it's not necessarily transforming their day-to-day life, and they're not seeing everything that they do as potentially an act of worship. And so I think kind of trying to live in the tension of those two things and realize that each one of those forms of worship actually feeds the other. So, if you're seeing everything that you do during the week as potentially an act of worship unto God, then when you actually come in and begin to sing, there's a depth and a richness to that worship time that otherwise wouldn't be there. And conversely, if during the week you're not seeing your life as an act of worship, then when you come in to sing, it may fall flat.
It's a hard reset.
Yeah. And so I think those two things actually work together. And whenever we focus just on one at the cost of the other, they both are affected, negatively.
That's good. One of the things that really changed the way I approach worship during the week was I was challenged to look at Sunday morning not as the beginning of the week, but as the end of the week.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of the week on the calendar, and so often we kind of come into church and go, okay, here's my reset, here's my refresh, this is where I'm going to get recentered, and everything is revolved around this renewal time, versus what really should be a celebration of what happened the week before. So that really changed the way I not only approach worship on Sundays, but also how I approach worship throughout the entire week, to just prepare to unleash and to prepare to just fully enter. And I think you're right. I think we can maybe first of all, what's up, Katie, and hello, Michael. Thank you guys for joining us. What's up, Nate? We're talking about how worship moves us throughout the week, and this is Jesse. If you're just joining us, he's a worship leader here in Boise with the Vineyard Music movement.
Yes,
and it is a movement. But yeah, so I think. A lot of times the answer is, well, I listen to worship throughout the day, and it's background music, and that's how I worship throughout the week. And my challenge would be pausing in that moment. Because that's what I think what Sunday does for worship is it forces us to put our phones down. We're not working. We're in a corporate environment. We're focused on the platform. We're focused on the music playing, and more importantly, we're focused on God. And I think worship can only happen if we are removing distractions. I'm not sure worship and distraction can live in the same space. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree.
You can disagree with me.
No,
too.
I think
Marcus disagrees with me all the time.
The challenge in that, I think the challenge is, that concept, I think it's Brother Lawrence, who was this
Brother
guy.
Lawrence.
Well, he was like this monk, right?
Okay.
I don't know exactly what era he lived. I know it was a long time ago, but he's the guy.
He sounds cool.
He was the guy that was like washing dishes and found that he wrote a book. Darn it. Anyway, it's this concept of like living life with a constant stream of interaction with God, and it's like I'm not there, personally. But I think sometimes when we view like our relationship with God and that interaction with God has to be done in like this quiet moment, like everything has to be just right, and then I can commune with God.
Yeah.
Often then we don't have those times because it's really hard to carve them out. Now it's
good.
necessary to carve them out because there is something that happens when we're intentional about that. But I think the challenge that I feel like I'm on, and the journey that I'm on, is how can I actually interact with God throughout the day, even in the mundane, in the norm, just normal life stuff.
Yeah.
How can I see God in it and actually have an ongoing conversation with Him as I'm just doing life? I think that's where we, is that worship? I don't know, but it's,
definitely. I
it's
think
developing that relationship with God that
Right.
isn't dependent on like just the right environment. And that, now with that said, I think there's something very significant about those times of silence and those times of just letting God speak to you in the quiet place, and just having, for me as a worship pastor, being intentional about having some time where I'm just worshiping just me and God.
Yeah.
So that when I'm leading on a Sunday morning, it's from a place of already being filled up, and that
Right.
I'm not using that time for myself to get
Right.
filled up.
Yep.
And then, all that as well to say that I think there is something super important on Sundays that you mentioned it, but the reality of a corporate worship environment versus just like a private one. There's something significant about that as well.
Yeah.
That you can't actually, we end up listening to worship music in our car, or maybe we watch, some worship service on TV
Right.
in our living room. And there's something that falls flat in that compared with worshiping, shoulder to shoulder with our brothers and sisters in Christ. Like it's nothing that can replace that.
Well, and it also gives you a sense of community that you're not alone. That you're not the only one battling whatever you're battling. That you've got a family around you. You've got other believers around you. So it brings a commonality that we can't get if we're by ourselves.
Right.
Got some good comments here. Caitlin says, one of my favorite quotes on worship from Wren Collective that applies to this topic: worship isn't supposed to be escapism. It's the head-on collision of the gritty reality of life with the glorious reality of God. That is a good quote.
It's good.
Like that. Yeah. Wren Collective, good guys. Mary says, I've personally tried to move worship music entirely out of any kind of context where it would only be background music. John of Tree 63 and I had a conversation one time about how worship had become just wallpaper. Ouch. And I've never forgotten it, but it's balance because you still need it in daily life. It's interesting. I do feel, what's your feeling on listening to spontaneous worship? Can you do it? Marcus and I have had this conversation. I know you're a huge fan of Bethel.
Yeah.
They do a lot of spontaneous recorded on their records. Can you listen to it and get into it, or is it just weird?
I wouldn't say it's weird.
Yeah.
I think when I listen to it in the context of realizing, like, okay, this was a moment. This was just a moment. Then I can just hear it for what it is. It's not necessary. I think listening to that, I think those kinds of moments are best in that moment.
Yeah.
When you're actually there and you're kind of, there's a context to that moment that it's hard to get when you're just listening to it.
I feel uncomfortable only because I view it as it's such a personal time. It's almost like it's too holy just to listen to it, just like any other track on a CD.
Yeah.
But I fully get it, and when it's not that I don't participate in that.
Yeah. I think
it's weird. I don't know. What do you guys think?
And I think I'd be curious to know how much. I think I know it's spontaneous, but a lot of times I think
Spontaneity.
there's a little bit of planning there, and I mean, you can kind of tell sometimes it is totally full on just spontaneous. Other times I think it's something that maybe was developing as they rehearsed, and it was like, oh, that's okay, there's something there.
It's like reality TV. I just compared spontaneous worship with reality TV.
Let's see what happens on the comments.
They're all leaving. So Mary says, personally, I've come to vastly prefer worship through playing music myself on guitar or piano instead of listening or just singing along. Forces me to engage on a deeper level. So Mary just saying if she participates in the act instead of just listening to it, sings along or plays an instrument or something, that's a good way to stay engaged. That's awesome. We're gonna. Why don't we play? Why don't we? Why don't you? I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna bow out. But we're gonna listen to a song that Jesse recorded on a couple EPs ago. Why don't you set it up, and I'm gonna bow out and let you take over here. Go ahead.
It's about time Kevin just gave me. This song is called "All for You, Jesus," and this is one of those songs where I was sort of just sitting on my couch and having one of those times with God, and just praying, and a lot of times a melody will just kind of come into my head, and I was just kind of sitting on that melody and just reflecting on the reality that. It can really be easy to be distracted. As we're talking about worship music, it can be easy to get distracted by the music and the production and just a ton of different things, and forget that this is really all it's about Jesus, and the reality that when we look around ourselves, we look at all of creation, that even all of creation is on a trajectory of worship of Jesus. Like that's what it's all about. And so I just began to sing this simple phrase. It's all for you, Jesus. All glory, all power, all praise be yours forever. And so from there I just began to flesh out the verses and the bridge, and so it's been a special song for me. Just it's a grounding, a rooting song to kind of always come back to that point of no matter what else, all the distractions, like it's all for you, Jesus. And so with that, I'll go ahead and sing it. Every song we sing, every word we say, every melody, every note we play, every heart that's beating in this place, every hand that's lifted up in praise, it's all for you, Jesus. All for you, Jesus. All of the glory, power, and Thank you.
Man, absolutely love that song. You've been leading it for a while in the church, and people, like you said, people are discovering it, and it came out on the EP about, what was that, 4 months ago?
That
5 months
was
ago?
like July 4th or something like that.
Yeah, in the summer. So
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Hey, and we've got some good news coming from the Boise.
We
from
do.
the Boise Park.
Yeah.
So share a little bit about what's coming from Vineyard.
So I've been talking with Jason Hagan, who leads Vineyard Worship, about a project coming out of Vineyard Boise for quite a while, and just different circumstances hasn't quite aligned, but it's finally all coming together, and so we're actually recording a full-length live album at our church on December 10th, and then it'll be released, sometime in early 2017, probably March or April.
March is a good month. That's my birthday month.
Oh, me too.
There you go.
March 17th.
18th.
What?
There you go.
St. Patrick's Day.
I know.
So you kind of missed that, but
it has to be March.
Yeah. So we have so Mitchell Maldonado. He's on staff at Vineyard Boise as our media director, and he's also a really good producer and engineer. And he actually produced one of the tracks on We Are Messengers album called Ghost, I believe.
Okay.
So check that out. It's
nice.
a great song. And then we're going to have the team from Anchor Studios will do the mix on it. And they've done, like I said, the last two of the last 3 albums. Yeah. So they'll be doing the mix on it. And I think it's going to be really good.
That's awesome.
I'm stoked about it.
Well, like we said, church music is massive right now. A lot coming out, but it's always fun when it comes from your home church and from good guys you know. So thanks, Jesse, for coming and talking a little bit about our topic. And you guys, Jeremiah from the Never Claim is going to be here tomorrow, filling in for Marcus, who is working hard out in Puerto Rico and getting drenched on. They're getting a lot of rain. Really? They're getting a lot of rain, which is not good for that area. But he actually went out with our church to serve for a week, so he will be back next week, and that means that we get to have cool guests like Jesse.
I mean, cooler than Marcus, really.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, this show's just going to explode.
Yeah.
So, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks to our Patreons. If you want to help support us, we got our first round out. I am shipping boxes today for our first couple Patreons. Thank you guys for joining with us very early on. And we're actually going to go buy some soundproofing with your funding. So that's going to be our very first thing that we're going to do. Sweet. And we have a lot more to buy and a lot more to do and build upstairs. So we need your help. You can go there and support them or support us. That would be great since we do this show with you guys. All right. Thanks, Jesse. Have a good week, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man.
All right. We will see you guys tomorrow. See ya.
but took a servant's name.